Welcome to the High Vibe Nation. The goal is to raise the vibration of every human being on the planet. Your host on this journey is Sherry Gideon. So let's join her now in her current interview with a high-vibing individual.
Hello and welcome to High Vibe Nation. I'm your host, Sherry Gideons, and this is a space for you to remember the power within you. And I'm super enthused today to have our guest, Sophie Frabotta, is an internationally recognized spiritual life coach, founder of Awaken Collective, which teaches speakers how to understand their spiritual awakening, do deep spiritual healing work to experience a sense of self-love and inner freedom, so they can then authentically step into the role of becoming a spiritual life coach. She has a master's degree in transpersonal psychology, meditation. She's a spiritual healer, crystal guide, and author of Continuous Appetite. Sophie coaches through courses, private coaching, retreats, meditation, and her signature spiritual life coaching certification. They call her the Soul Whisperer because her spiritual healing work will open up a channel in you that sounds like a whisper. And long after you have completed your work with her, you will hear it. Let's welcome to the show, Sophie. Hello, darling.
Hello.
Oh my God, I've been super excited to have you because whenever I have people like yourself on the show, there's just such an alignment because, you know, I too am a spiritual, I like to call myself a spiritual transformational coach. And so I just love that you're on the show today. So welcome. So just a little bit about, just because I want people to truly know what the meaning of all this is. What's the difference between a life coach and a spiritual life coach?
So the way that I explain it, life coaching, I kind of like back up even a step further because a lot of people are like, well, what's the difference between life coaching and therapy? That's like the biggest question that most people have. And then what's the difference between a life coach and a spiritual life coach? I like to say the biggest difference between therapy and coaching is the questions that we ask and we answer. Mm-hmm. So to simplify it, in therapy, we're asking the question, why am I where I am? Mm-hmm. In life coaching, we're asking the question, where do I want to go? So we're in therapy, we're kind of looking back over the life. In coaching, we're looking into the future. Now, that's typical life coaching. When you bring in spiritual life coaching, what I like to say is we work with one foot in both worlds. So we work in the world of healing, not therapy, healing and creation, coaching. So I'm a firm believer, if we do not heal our blocks and we work on creation, we work on manifesting, we work on moving into that space, our blocks are going to find us. So like I like to say, for instance, if somebody has not worked on their own self-rejection, they have that like deep internal subconscious block of self-rejection, they may attract their soulmate and they may be with them for a year and a half. And then their soulmate may break their heart because, well, one, they weren't meant to ultimately be together forever. And two, the self-rejection that they're carrying inside is ready to be dealt with. So the more that we resist what we need to deal with, it will find us. And usually the lessons get louder and louder and louder. So that is the difference between, so a life coach typically just looks at forward strategic movement, while a spiritual life coach is going to work in the world of healing and creation, but also with that spiritual component. You know, I like to say that I don't have your answers. You have your answers. It's just my job to help you tap into them and ask the questions that get you in touch with them. So spirituality plays a big part in the work that we do as spiritual life coaches. I think she just got kicked out.
Yeah, no, I love that. I pushed the wrong button and back.
Oh, I'm like, oh no, what do I do?
No worries. No, and I love that you're really being specific about what that is, because one of the things in this, what I like to call the time of the Great Awakening, I mean, I was shown this in a near-death experience in 1997, and that this time was going to come about. And so what I didn't realize when I came back into this body was that I was going to go through a 26-year period of literally learning to live in the moment and understanding how to access that power and that those inner tools, that inner wisdom inside of me, like you're describing, around the difference. And so I can say today that the gift in all of that for myself is that I realize that everything I need, everything outwardly starts inwardly. And so if I can tap into, like you said, that part of me that lived a life before I was awake and aware, living on default and living based on everybody else's opinions and, people's beliefs and their religions and stuff like that, then, it was causing, enormous pain, enormous adversity, self-doubt, the typical things that we face. And so I wanted to go a little bit deeper in that. And so in what you just shared, so what does spirituality mean to you?
I would answer that question by bringing in the opposite of like religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are in tune with a religion. They may have not great feelings about it, but they are in tune with religion. Then we have spirituality. So the way I like to break it down is religion is like the knowledge of God. It's like learning about God and holding it in your mind. But spirituality is the experience of God. And so once we take that knowledge down into the body and we actually embody it and start living with a permanent God awareness is, to me, what I describe as spirituality. So like for me, there's and whether we use the word God, universe, to me, it doesn't matter. The language you use to connect to the creator of all that is doesn't matter to me. And when I'm working with clients or students, I like to know the language they use because I don't want to be using language that turns them away or makes them feel more resistant. So ultimately, I would say that spirituality is the experience, the living experience of God, divinity living within you and your awareness of it ever presently in your life.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. And I mean, look at the name of your business, I mean, if that doesn't say it for what it is, and what you just really talked about. Let's dig a little bit into your story. Tell me a little bit about how this, started for you. Where in your journey were you that suddenly you started tapping into this part of yourself?
So my story kind of started about 20 years ago when I was a hot mess. I mean, I was depressed. I was anxious. I was an empath that didn't know I was an empath, which was causing a lot of my imbalance. I was also doing a lot of drugs. And the worst thing was that I was bulimic. So I started to use food to soothe all the stuff I was feeling that mostly was not mine, that I didn't realize at the time. I used food to soothe that. And then I had the results that I wasn't looking for of gaining weight. So I'm like, well, I got to get this food out of my body. So then I began to purge the food. And this is a secret, right? No one knows. I mean, bulimia that's one of the characters of it. It's like, we don't tell anyone about this. This is our secret. And this is what keeps us sane. Until it was Easter 2001. And I came home to visit my parents. This was when I lived in the Northeast. And we went to church on Easter. And the pastor preached about a start of new beginnings. And I sat in that church and was just like, I could use a new beginning. I really need some help. And in that moment, I just remember kind of crying out to God and being like, God, if you're real, if you're really anything, come into my life because I need help. And it was later that afternoon, I was on the back porch with my mom, and I just confessed to her. Now, I had a very close relationship with my mom. I would tell her a lot of stuff that was going on in my life. And she had a very spiritual parenting style where she would kind of let me make mistakes and work with me on things. But that day was different. So here I am. I confess everything that I've been doing. And she says, okay, Sophie. So I'm like, I'm bulimic. I'm doing drugs. I'm puking. I'm overeating tremendously. Help. And she leaned forward and she was like, Sophie, you have 3 weeks of school left. I need you to go back to school, not do any drugs, and don't puke up your food. You can eat as much as you want and we'll figure it out, but can you make me that promise? And in that moment, I knew the power of my word. And I knew that if I said a yes, I would have to mean it full body. And I gave her my yes. And it was that yes that I believe ended up saving my life. Because a week later, it was a party week at our school and I was a designated driver. And one of my friends ended up getting killed in a car accident.
Oh, wow.
And sitting at her funeral, I felt God's presence whisper in my ear, you've been given a second chance. What are you going to do with it? And I was like, I have no freaking clue. I mean, I was so imbalanced, I couldn't even cry. I was sitting at a funeral with my friends under my arms and I couldn't even cry. So long story short, I came home from school, I got into therapy, I started having mild improvements, and I started going to church. And I started connecting with God, and I connected with God through Jesus. I have a very strong relationship with Jesus. I do not follow any type of Christian pathways. I'm very spiritual, and I always loved Jesus and the chakras, and the Christian community had no idea what to do with me. So I had to kind of forge my own path with that. But I then found life coaching through a TV show on NBC called Starting Over with Jan Van Zant and
I
Rhonda
remember
Byrne.
it. Yes.
Yeah. And I recorded with a VCR every episode and started doing the work like I was living in that house. And within 6 months, I was changing. My life was changing. I was getting my mental clarity and my emotional balance back. I was understanding boundaries. I was waking up. And that's when I decided to go back to school, which was what brought me down to Florida. I got my undergrad down here in Florida. And just, I can remember crying out at points on my journey saying, God, if you get me through this darkness and show me the light and let me hold the light, I will dedicate my life to doing that for others. And so, I started my business 14 years ago, and that's what I've been doing. I'm a light carrier. I walk into the darkness of people's souls, regardless of what the story is, and I help them find the light in numerous ways. But that's ultimately the kind of healing work that I do. I don't lay my hands on people. I use words and deep listening and talking and redirecting to move stale energy out of the body and reprogram it with truth, with light.
Oh my gosh. The beauty of this is we're always attracting what we are. I mean, we've got Dave Sanderson here on the show with us right now. And I don't know if you know Dave's story or have ever heard of him, but you remember the movie Sully? Remember where the pilot flew in?
Oh, yeah.
He was the last person off the plane, and he helped everybody off the plane. He ended up with hypothermia. What is it when you're really, really cold when you're in the water? Because he was in the water for so long. But I listened to this man's story 2 weeks ago, and I was just so moved. And people like us come together and we lift each other up. We come together in the spiritual truth to help people worldwide and globally connect and attach to the power that they are, to the truth of who they are. And listening to your story right now, your story is my story, my friend. I literally had my own near-death experience in 1997. I'm a pro bodybuilder. And I came up during the evolution of the beginning of bodybuilding, and the same thing as you, bulimia and anorexia. And finally, a friend who had died of a drug overdose. I was drug addicted. I hadn't eaten in 7 months. literally I began to hear his spirit speak with me and plead with me not to let happen to me what had happened to him. And just as yourself, I began to call out to God, if this is all there is pain and suffering and, shame and guilt and all these things, and people telling me I'm not good enough, I'm not, telling me I'm not good enough, then, show me what's next, take me. And so the same thing, like yourself, just like Ayana Van Zant showing up on a television show for you, when I went to the other side, I was told that I never had to worry, that all the right people would show up at the right moment to help me move forward. And so I come back into the body, and what I didn't realize is I was going to become this woman that I had been shown on the other side over a period of 26 years, that I was going to continually move forward in the moment, being her, just stepping into her. And so I love hearing your story, sweetie, because it literally, like, I had to really hold back not to cry when you're telling me the story, because I'm an empath as well. I feel very sensitively people's spirits and where they are in their lives. And I could feel where you've been. So thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I can remember hearing a little bit of your story on some of the stuff we've done on Clubhouse. And I mean, you're just, even the frequency of your story and what you brought back from the other side is so impactful. And it carries with it, it is a very high vibe nation, it's beautiful. So thank you for doing the work you're doing and sharing this.
Yeah. So how have you been able to discover, what your ultimate spiritual gifts are? Has it been from, asking those questions within your spirit? Has it been just, met through meditation? How have you been able to tap and discover what those spiritual gifts are?
So I think that we all have a couple dominant gifts that are currently happening for everyone. It's just if we're like tuning into them. So I'm clairaudient, which means I hear spirit. Yep. And the second that I learned the different clairs, like our 3 or 4 main ones, we have clairvoyant, clairsentient, claircognizant, clairaudient. We either see spiritual information, we hear spiritual information, we know spiritual information, or we sense spiritual information. Those are what I have found on the journey are like the 4 ways that spirit predominantly shows up to people. So if you just start paying attention, and like you awaken, you become more aware to how this information is showing up. Do I hear it? Do I see it? Do I sense it? Do I know it? That's when you can start to strengthen. So for me, it was hearing. I would hear, like in a session with a client, let's say, like insecurity. Mm-hmm. Like, so as they're talking about this situation with their boss and blah, 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 and I hear insecurity. And so I know it's my job to walk them down this path into their subconscious to help them find that. And that's through a series of questions and training and all that stuff. But so your question on how do you know your spiritual gift, or how do you find those? I think that it just starts by being aware. And like really, like I in our programs, I talk about 17 different spiritual gifts that typically pop up for a lot of people. And in the beginning of our programs, people kind of identify with 2 of them. And by the end, typically they've checked, because I have them do kind of a survey kind of thing. They checked 8 to 12 of the boxes. They've activated all these different things. And most people that are into doing healing work, spiritual work, are empaths. Mm-hmm. They can feel other things. Like I like to say, the feeling volume is all the way to the top. Mm-hmm. So they can sense frequencies. They can sense emotions. They can sense thoughts that are not being said. And that can make life really challenging if you don't know you have that gift. So like for me, as a freshman in college, walking around a campus completely unaware that I had that gift, I'd walk to class and feel like happy and excited and suicidal and depressed all at once, because I was picking up other people's frequencies and I had no energetic boundaries. Mm-hmm. And I was doing drugs and weakening my aura on a daily basis, doing the opposite of strengthening my energetic self. And so Yeah, that's what I would say is it starts with a little awareness and then a little bit of education on how spirit shows up and how we start to strengthen these spiritual hearings and understandings that are happening within us all the time.
And that's so true. I mean, I love the way you described it, because I think I always say what you're seeking is always seeking you. And so as you begin to ask those questions, better quality questions, and that you begin to become aware inside of yourself that this power, this presence, it's always been here within each and every one of us. And as we ask these questions, the willingness to get out of the way of the how and to allow these answers to be demonstrated really in infinite ways that most of us can't even rationalize. But the gift in it is, I mean, what I've discovered for myself, with self-awareness, for example, that the more I live in the moment and the more that I recognize what's showing up in my present moment, that's revealing to me a part of myself, whether I want to take accountability for it or not. And so when it's showing up, I've been able to develop that self-awareness, just like a muscle going to the gym in myself, and to be able to choose differently. And you and I both know that, healing is a messy business. And I know that you talk a lot about that in your programs and what you do and the information you're putting out there to people. When you talk about a messy process, what do you mean by that?
It's not linear. And we like linear things. We like to sing songs like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And healing is like H, K, L, P, R. Like it's just all over the place. And so that makes people uncomfortable. But if we can get into more of that organic space and recognize that what comes up is layered, and the layers that come up are what will reveal themselves. So like I like to say, your psyche is like your security guard, keeping all your secrets, even if they're wounds and they're holding you back, keeping those safe. And the more that we feel safe, right? So we're coming out of the reptilian brain. All the reptilian brain wants to do is, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? So anyone that's experienced trauma has been triggered into their reptilian brain. The longer that they've experienced trauma, the longer they're there. So once we declare, I am safe, then we can start to move up to the limbic system. And the limbic system is I feel. What do I feel? Let me acknowledge the feelings, right? So this is a lot of what takes place in therapy, is this step from the reptilian to the limbic system. But ultimately the goal is to come up to the neocortex where I have choice. I have choice. Now, if I'm stuck in, I'm not sure I'm safe, there's no way I can use all my sparkly tools up here. And so for me, the way that I describe healing is, and I work with a lot of veterans. I'm part of a nonprofit organization, and we work with veterans. And so the goal is getting them into I am safe so that they can feel, so that we can show them the tools and all the other choices they can start to make. And it's wildly successful. So healing is a messy process, because if somebody has been so stuck in I am not safe, and we start to show them that they are safe, the way they respond to that isn't always linear. It's not always like, oh, okay, perfect. Now we're going to go to step B. Right. That's why I like to say, and especially with my coaches that I certify, I'm not giving you a template. I'm not giving you a formula, because one size fits all does not work for everyone. Ultimately, if you have 100 tools, you might use 80 with this client and only 20 with this client, and they might both have the same exact success. So that's what I mean by messy. It's not predictable. It's not linear. We can't just say, I know exactly what I need to do for you. Well, I mean, really, really good healers, I think, use an organic approach, right? They don't have an agenda before somebody walks in. The person walks in, they assess the energy, they see with a program, they know what needs to be done, and they do it. So you could say there's a formula there to an extent, but it's a pretty organic formula. So.
I love that. I mean, and I can relate with that on so many levels, because with myself, I always ask spirit to use me. use me, speak through me, and I ground in spirit. And a lot of times when I'm speaking to somebody, or I'm even speaking to a crowd of people, I feel like I'm merely the vehicle, the messenger that spirit is speaking through. So I just plain and simply get out of the way. And like you were speaking about earlier, as I have gotten still and just gotten quiet and allowed spirit to reveal to me the same thing with myself. I mean, spirit speaks to me like you and I are speaking right now. I mean, I'm just a channeler for spirit. And so simple things like I can ask any question at night before I go to bed, and I'll be woken up at a specific time during the night. And I will just, like one time I asked, how do you bridge the gap between time and space and manifesting instantaneously? And spirit woke me up at 2:00 in the morning and said, do you want the answer to your question? As simple as that. And I sat straight up, and spirit said, live in the moment. And so that was in 2007. So since then, I've been literally on this journey of mastering being through the moments of today, and accessing the choice of joy, the choice of deeper and deeper clarity of what is freedom to me, what is freedom of movement, what is, walking outside. People get so caught up in, I got to go out there and make money. And they don't realize that abundance and prosperity are everywhere present. You walk out your front door every single day, and there's abundance and prosperity everywhere. And as we begin to link to those associations, what happens is we begin to pull them into our now moments, because it's our natural state of being. So when I'm hearing you share these principles and stuff like that, I mean, it just, once again, is just what was said to me so many years ago, that there would come a time in history, and the great channelers and the great healers and the great speakers of the world would come together, and we would build one spirit, one spiritual nation, and that we would deliver this message globally, and that the world will finally hear what I call solfeggio frequencies, the sound waves through our throat, the sound waves through all of the alignment of our chakras. And so I love how you bring in the whole brain and everything about it into, describing, because we do live in a world where, a lot of people want scientific facts. And so now spirituality and science are merging, and we're able to describe how all of these experiences and these events are occurring in our lives, based on our habits of thinking and being. And, we're building those neurotransmitters in the brain. But what what I like to say, the cool thing is they're now saying the heart vibrates at 60 times, 4,000 neurites more powerful than the human brain, and that it sends out almost like, the sound waves of a whale. It sends out these frequencies that are like this powerful tuner that is just, if you could get out of the way and build that resilience in your heart, that when we talk about in the Bible, it says manna will fall from heaven. Manna will fall from heaven because you're so coherent and so aligned and resilient within this heart region that life is happening with ease and grace. It does not have to be a struggle. It does not have to be riddled with, challenges and setbacks and all of that. So, I mean, when you and I get to have these kind of conversations like we're having right now, and you're revealing the stuff that you're revealing right now, I'm like, all right, sister, we're in the right space. We're in the right moment. We're in the right time. And let's just get down and talk about it. And so, you talk a lot about healing, and I've been hearing that in your message. What are two things that people can do today to change their lives?
Well, the first one, and I mean, I feel like it's becoming a broken record, but it's it's new to our consciousness. I think our collective consciousness is meditation. And when I say meditation, what I am talking about, and some of the ways that I refer to meditation, are internal practice sessions. So we have knowledge. A lot of people can gain knowledge and are smart in their head. But if we don't bring it down into the body, into the heart region, and start living it and pulsing it, it just remains on that like 2D frequency, maybe 3D. And if we want to bring it alive and make it more and take it into 5D, we have to embody it. And the way that I have found to pull knowledge into the body so that it can be in the heart, pulsing in your field, is through meditating. I teach spiritual meditation. We have over 35 free meditations on our website. There's no opt-in. It's just go to awakenwithsophie.com/meditate, and there's all of our playlists. I find it very important to offer, my style is different than a lot of meditation teachers. I'm not a transcendental meditation or a mindfulness meditation. I am a spiritual journeying meditation teacher that shows you how to do the healing work on the inside. And we have lots of different topics like clear your energy or activate your self-love or cut cords, different topics like that show you how to start doing some of this spiritual healing work, eyes closed, but totally awake, so that you can embody turning that knowledge into wisdom so that the heart begins to pulse it.
Oh my gosh, so powerful. And I love how you brought up 5D. Let's talk a little bit about that for a second, because right now, that's all we're hearing about, 5D. And a lot of people have absolutely no idea, okay, if we're in 3D, how are we in 5D? And what does that actually mean spiritually, universally? And talk about that a little bit.
So yeah, the way that I break it down very, very simply is 3D is like what I can see is real, right? And 5D is I start to know that there is a lot that I cannot see that is real. I also talk about it in the stages of God awareness. So 3D is a brief God awareness. Like just every so often, I have a God awareness in 3D. In 4D, I have a temporary God awareness. My God awareness, my awareness of divinity living within comes and goes. And it's a little bit more than in 3D. But in 5D, I have a permanent God awareness. My awareness that divinity is living within me. I came from the divine. I will return to the divine is ever present in my thoughts, emotions, actions, choices. It is pulsing. It is living in me. So that's like one of the quick ways that I break down 3D to 5D. And then you have a lot of other concepts in 5D. 5D is all about heart. It's all about like heart-centered consciousness and recognizing that the heart field is much more powerful than the brain field. So that's my quick understanding or quick way that I like to share the fifth dimensional reality or collective journey that I think we're on. And I think there's people right now that are stabilized in their fifth dimensional template. They're there, they are stabilized, they don't hop into 3D much. And there's people that are completely stabilized in their 3D template. So we have a lot of shifting happening. And so for me, my goal is just to stabilize more and more and more in that fifth dimensional template and raise my vibration and stabilize and raise and stabilize and raise.
I love it. Tom, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you very much. He says, I love your message. That's awesome. Yes. And you're so right. I mean, and like going back to living in the moment, that's exactly how I've been able to stabilize mine. And a lot of it was a commitment, a deep desire to live my spiritual truth, to be this woman that I chose in this lifetime to come here and be, and to remember. And so living in the moment is there's so much joy in it, because as you build that awareness muscle, and I play this little game sometimes, like if something's showing up that because every once in a while something now will show up that just might not be in alignment, and I'll play this little game with it, and I'll go, ha, 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 caught you in 17 seconds, and I'll be like, and so I teach NLP too, and what even Abraham talks about fun anchors. And so for me, it's sounds. Everything is sounds for me. So it's either a shaka boomy boom boom, or it's a shaka laka laka shock shock shoo, or anything that causes, that quick shift in me and realigns me and connects me to fun, to play, to being that exuberant self. And the cool part about, the last 25 years for myself is I freaking love playing full out. I love being animated and over the top. And as I've been willing just to be Sherry Marie Gideons, no longer in competition or worry about what somebody else is doing or if something's like me or whatever, I merely honor the other individual because of the recognition that every single person and everything alive is the face of God. I mean, even when that person cuts you off on the road, I've had the same spiritual mentor for over 20 years. And she'd say, Sherry, that's the face of God right there in the car next to you that just cut you off. And you might be over here going, good son of a, what, and, which a lot of people like to do. But the beauty is that I've been able to create fun on the spiritual journey and surrender. I mean, when you talk about 5D and what you just shared right now, for me, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, there's infinite avenues, channels, and opportunities for the how of whatever it is I need will show up in the moment. And because I know that, I'm out of the way. I'm just living a day, moment to moment day, totally and absolutely allowing and surrendering, knowing that there's nothing I need. And the more I vibrate with joy, the more everything that vibrates with joy shows up and is attracted to me, just like someone like yourself that's sharing the same message.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're talking about that's the face of God, right there. It reminds me. So one of the things that I teach some of my students is this concept called soul love. So I have something called the soul love mastery method, and that is the step beyond self-love. So a lot of people are aware collectively of soul self-care, right? Self-care is the external way that we take care of ourselves. And a lot of people associate that with self-love, but self-love is an internal awareness that I love me, I am with me, I am my friend. And what I say the deeper step underneath that is soul love. And that is the recognition of divinity living within you and embracing that fully. Because if you really ultimately embrace divinity lives within me, I like to say divinity gave my soul a yes. Divinity stamped my life mission with a yes. What is bigger than that? No one's opinion down here. It doesn't matter. So that gives me freedom to really be who I am and step into who I am and define who I am and release judging others. So I no longer judge myself and I don't judge you. And so your judgments don't matter. They can't define me. Mm-hmm. And so now I have a sense of freedom because of my soul love. And that's something that I actively practice and teach and stand really true in. And it just reminds me, it's it's the same consciousness. If I look at my neighbor right next to me that just offended me and I say that's the face of God or divinity is living within them too, yep, we can come into that space of synergy and harmony. And I don't need to exude any negative frequencies from my field at you because I know how to own them, discharge them, reset, and then send a blessing.
Yeah. Or ego, a lot of people, if somebody talks or behaves in a specific way to them, they'll want to come from the energy that's in front of them and behave and react and respond in the same energy that's right there instead of I like to call it sitting on your own shoulder in third person, and you're watching your behavior, your reaction, this conversation. And the more that you build that awareness and that spiritual muscle, you can look at any conversation, any experience as the observer and recognize that it's there for you to reveal to you a piece of yourself that's ready to be healed, ready to be released. And so for me, what I like to say to myself is thank you. And you know what I'll say is I know your real name. You are love. And I'll tell it because when we talk about, I call this the uncurving. And so if you think about the chakras, energy is moving from all of the chakras. And so when a limiting belief or, some old thing shows up, or even a person, place, or thing, and what I call the limiting belief is the green energy. And so here comes a block wanting to stop the energy from moving all the way up and growing circumference of energy in the chakras. And so when I look at that energy and I smile at it and I tell it, I know your real name. You are love. Return to your original position. Go upward. I love you. And I keep doing that and muscle testing to see where the energy is. But you're right. I mean, that's such an important thing to make such a commitment to when you realize that this journey, we don't realize we came here for ourselves. We came here to remember the power that we are first. It goes back to, why did I get sick for so many times in my life? 2 massive heart attacks and all these different health issues, because I was giving away my energy. I wasn't giving from the overflow. I was giving it all away, and it was showing up as disease and dis-ease in my body. And so even I had the second heart attack in 2004, and they told me I was going to die in 6 months. And instead of looking at the illusion or the appearance of sickness, I went in and I began to speak my word and align with spirit and recognize there's no separation, and then make a declaration, and then be in such gratitude for the truth and release it, just allowing it to be demonstrated. It was already so. And within 3 years, healed to 100%. So I love these conversations that, you're sharing with us today. Such a great message, girl.
Wow, you too. Oh my goodness. I just love that. Like, I know your real name.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
Yes. And for some of the healing work that I do, I can totally, I like that piece so much, because return to your original position.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. It's like, what I'll say is, I found you. You're a lost fractal, and it is my job to recycle you back to the divine, so the divine can turn you into light and do what it needs to do. But it's very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Like I encourage a lot of my students and clients to become recyclers of light. These lost fractals that have lost their way, and they're just wandering around the universe. And we don't just, if we find it in ourselves, we don't just put that energy back out there.
Right.
We take it and we send it back to the divine.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. We've got on the call with us Dr. Michael McMorrow, and he says, return to your original position. And he is the minister for Center for Spiritual Living in Granada Hills. And I am a practitioner with his organization. So thank you, Mike, for being on the show with us today. We appreciate you. And he's a believer just like ourselves, that we are the original one. There is no separation. That original one lives through each and every one of us, and it reveals itself to the degree we allow. So what a gift. Now you have this method, and I want to hear about this method. I read about this method. It's called the 4 R's method. What is that?
So after working with clients, I had worked with clients for 14 years. And I started to see these themes. I started to see, like, not necessarily a template or a formula, but these phases that people would go through. And those phases were recognize, release, reprogram, and radiate. That was the journey that people were taking from wounded to freedom. Now, just to break it down a little bit. So recognize is not the presenting problem, right? A lot of people think what brings them in the door to working with somebody, a practitioner, a massage therapist, a doctor, is my presenting problem. But what I have discovered in spiritual healing work is there's a root wound underneath that. So we need to really recognize the root wound. Then we need to go to phase 2. Now, this is where I have found that traditional therapy ends, right? They're really good at recognizing and leading you down to the root wound. But then what? I would say, 80% of my clients had come from therapy and come from that space of like, what do I do now? Okay, I know that I have this issue and I was abused by this person in my family and now I have to see them. How the heck am I going to handle that situation? Mm-hmm. So then we move to the second phase, and that's release. We need to actually take the energy from our body and release it through different healing modalities. This can be anything. This can be all the way from Ho'oponopono to theta healing, to NLP, to meditation, to light healing techniques, to I have a spiraling trauma technique that I use. It's a variety of all these different healing modalities that a lot of practitioners have. They have their like little unique spin on this one or this one. That's where we insert the modality. So first we need to recognize the root wound before we insert the modality. Then we need to do the modality. And then we come to the third phase, which is reprogram. And the reason I say reprogram and not affirmations is because I feel like affirmations have really gotten a reputation for putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone. And that's not where they have their power. Where they have their power, I look at affirmations or reprogrammings as like new furniture, right? And so if we're going to redesign our house, we got to get the old stuff out so that we have somewhere to put it. So after we've released the stale energy and gotten it out of our field, now we're ready to actually reprogram the space with new energy. And that can be whatever the opposite of the frequency is that you want to feel, or whatever the ultimate intention is. That's where we start to plug it in through repetition, through writing, speaking, hearing, vision boards, whatever it may be, but it's a repetition is the most important thing, that you're taking these reprogrammings in like medicine. And then we move to our fourth phase, which is radiate. And this is the phase that everyone wants. This is the goal, is that I get to feel different. I get to see life through a different lens. And that is what I ultimately want. But a lot of people want to hop there. They want to radiate without doing the work. So what I teach my students in my certification, my spiritual life coach certification, is how to do this work and how to walk people through. Now, again, healing is not linear. So you may have people that need to reprogram before they're ready to release. And that's okay, because there are no rules. It's all intuition based. So if somebody needs to build enough strength in their system to be able to do the release technique so that they can release the energy, that is okay. There's room for that. This is a system that, I like to be very mindful about spiritual bypassing and not skipping steps. Yep. And a lot of people want to skip the steps. They just want to shine. They want to radiate. And this theory, this method, I feel like just gives them a kind of an example of the phases we need to go through to ultimately achieve the result we're looking for.
Wow, that's so powerful. Have you ever heard of spiritual mind treatment?
Mm-mm.
So Ernest Holmes, kind of lived and worked with the transcendentalists and all of that in the 1800s. He studied with Mary Baker Eddy and Charles Fillmore of Unity and all of that. And so spiritual mind treatment is first the recognition that there's only one source. and you recognize first there's one source, one power. And like you said, it has many names. You can call it God, infinite intelligence, the universe, your higher power. And then you align with it. This source lives through me, as me, within me. And then you begin to speak your word, because if there's no separation between you and this loving presence that's everywhere present in and through you and all things, then when you are speaking your word, you are speaking it as you are aligning with, there is only one source, one power, one infinite intelligence. It lives through me. I know and declare right here and right now that everything within me operates at its highest capacity. Every organ, every cell, every vein, every artery. My heart is pumping with the joy of its power, with the gift of its power. And so in knowing that truth, I am in deep gratitude. So now we're in gratitude, which is our 1, 2, 3, fourth step. And how awesome is it, like you said earlier, to know this, to know that you know that you know that you know that there is no separation. And that as you release that to the, what we like to call the action of the law, or to the law, it's infinite avenues, channels, and opportunities for the how to reveal itself. And if you know and believe this truth, then you let it be. You quit ripping up the root. You quit, trying to make things happen and hustle and drive in and all of that. And you allow. And all you're merely pulling into your now moments is what you are. And so that's what spiritual mind treatment is. So you can speak it on any level, on anything, and you can get very clear and very specific about it. And so as you're speaking it, you're vibrating a frequency. You're building that frequency, just like a tuner on a radio station. You're fine tuning the channel so strongly and powerfully that when it's getting sent out, that signal, you can't help but go back. So that's what spiritual mind treatment is. And it's powerful stuff. I mean, I had a baby that was born without a throat, and they gave us all of these huge, the typical, this is what could happen, worst case scenario. And I said, no, my baby is going to demonstrate complete and absolute wholeness. Literally, she was born with hemivertebrae and all kinds of congenital issues. And today you would not know there was one thing wrong with this child unless I was having a conversation with you right now. So, what we're talking about is powerful stuff. And when you and I and people like us come together, we get to, Mike's saying, isn't it cool that Sophie found her own method that is similar to SMT? Yes. And when I was listening to you, that's why I asked you if you knew what spiritual mind treatment was, because it was literally making me think of spiritual mind treatment.
How cool. I've never even heard of it. I'm going to have to look into it.
Yeah. Look into Ernest Holmes, religious science of mind. And ultimately, really, it's everything that you've been talking about.
Wow.
And it's such a gift. And I'm fascinated to hear. So, when you're using these methods and these tools like the 4 R's method with people, what's the biggest thing you see change with your clients?
So I like the work that I really love doing is getting into that subconscious. Well, one, I'm not necessarily working with people that are coming in with a ton of trauma outside of the veterans that I work with a nonprofit. But those situations, I feel like you can see a lot more dramatic change within 12 weeks, which is the time I have to work with them, where you're getting them really out of the reptilian brain and you can start to see them making new choices and redirecting. I love that, but in terms of like my students who have already been doing this work for quite some time, being able to do that polishing work where somebody is really being held back by a limiting belief that is so apparent to me externally and they just can't see it. And I know I can't just like come into their world and say, here's the limiting belief I see. I know I have to gradually, with spirit, with their higher self, walk them into the awareness and then show them the work to do to unwind it from their subconscious, send it up to the divine, and then plant in that new frequency. So somebody that really struggles with, just like self-ownership or, and I can tell it's coming from this place of feeling so disempowered. And so they just don't know, they can't even see that it's that. They're just like, oh, I'm insecure about this and I'm insecure about this. And I don't think this is going to work for me. That's the way it appears on the language level. But deep down, I know there's an empowerment issue. So we do the work and we get down into just asking about, childhood stuff and different experiences that they've had and what that makes them feel, getting them into the vibration slowly so that we can discover what that frequency is. And then helping them, I have a technique called healing beliefs that helps them go in. We wrap that belief in a cloth, we pull it up through the chakras, and then we lay it in the hands of the divine in the 7th chakra to be returned to the divine. And then we have the divine give us like a shower, and then setting the intention. There's actually some work that they do before we do this session. So they have their new intention already set that they want to be planted inside of that space. And this is all eyes closed work. So, whatever we then plant in there, if it is empowerment, for me, it's just so cool to see, a month later or 2 months later, them speaking their truth. It's like their voice has changed, or people coming back and saying colors look different. Somebody saying, I've just gotten so clear on who I am. I don't care what I will lose. I am not willing to hide my light 1 second longer. And they, finally write that book they wanted to write, or they, get into doing the thing that they've always wanted to do because that subconscious belief is no longer there. And so they have the energy inside of them connected to the divine to now do what they're trying to do.
Oh my God, girl, that was powerful what you just shared. Thank you so much. So why don't you just tell us how everyone here in our audience and future listeners, how do they go about getting certified as a spiritual life coach with you?
So I have a 5-month training. It's a little intense. And I like to say that up front. We have it split into 2 sections. We start with an 8-day virtual retreat where we go through the 4 R's method in detail. And we have several live meetings where we meet as a cohort that week. Now, the cohorts that I have are very small, it's very intimate, and it's very hands-on. When I take people into my healing cocoon, as I call it, like I'm not hiring somebody else. I mean, we do have support, and I have a program success coach as well that supports us all. But it is an intimate experience where we are diving into the depths of your soul to ultimately do the healing on you first. So that's what I say to everyone. You are your first client, and you will always be your client. And if you always stay on top of your stuff, you will be able to help anyone. Like I like to say, if I haven't gone to the depth of my soul, how can I take somebody there? Right. If I haven't cried from the pit of my stomach, how can I be with somebody when they're crying from the pit of theirs? So it's that authenticity piece where we travel within. We do a lot of work with imagery. We do work with spiritual awareness, spiritual visioning. And then the last module is about becoming a coach and really stepping into your offer and how you want to translate the spiritual vision into work in the world. And then there's just some basic business building, having a spiritual business, doing spiritual marketing, like what that really means. And talking about money and talking about, the conversations and the blocks and the resistance people have around that in that last module. And then there's a final exam at the end, and they graduate, and then they get their certificate and they are ready to go. And then we have a continued coaching community as well, where people can stay connected on a monthly basis, and we meet live. And so that's our intensive process. It's 5 months long.
Wow.
And it's I mean, to me, it's just like this spirit team that I get to work with to channel this information. I mean, it's so beyond me. And it's pretty miraculous, the transformation I've seen happen in just that short period.
I love it. I love it. So go ahead and speak for our audience and our podcast, how they can get a hold of you.
So our website is awakenwithsophie.com. That has all of our courses, our certification, the retreats we offer. It also, like I had said before, we have a ton of free resources that I encourage you to check out. We have a whole tab called Free Sources. That's like different workshops that we have, mini courses that you can get a full access pass. There is an opt-in, but you can get the workshops we've done, the mini courses we offer, different meditation playlists that we have that are not on our main meditation playlist. So check out that. And then we have our meditation playlist, which has over 35 meditations, and we add several new ones every month that really can help you. So they all range from anywhere from like 8 minutes to 20 minutes. This is not a huge investment of time that you need to make if you're just beginning, or even if you're an avid meditator. Doing some of these spiritual exercises on the inside can really, really accelerate your healing. So awakenwithsophie.com is my website. That's where you can find all of our stuff. And I look forward to connecting with anyone who this resonates with.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sophie. I really appreciate you being on High Vibe Nation today. This has been an amazing experience, and the vibe's been so wonderful and fun and playful. So thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Yes. Thank you for having me. And I love you, and I love the work you're doing in your story. It's so powerful. It's beautiful. So thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Likewise, my sister. I mean, we are part of each other. So it's just amazing that, I get to attract people like you all the time, and we come together and we really just get to share that light worldwide. So I appreciate you very much.
Oh, thank you.
I want to thank every single person, as always, for being a part of the High Vibe Nation, and future listeners. I want to thank you because High Vibe Nation is a space for you to remember the power within you. You can find us on the web at www.thehighvibenation.com. You can find us on Instagram at The High Vibe Nation, and you can find us on Facebook at The High Vibe Nation. I also have a group now that's dedicated specifically to High Vibe Nation entrepreneurs, business leaders, and spiritual people, spiritual coaches, stuff like that. So if you'd like to visit that, you can visit that on facebook.com/groups/High Vibe Nation Entrepreneur. And until the next show, my friends, once again, thank you so much, and have an amazing rest of the day.
From everybody here at the High Vibe Nation, we want to say thank you for choosing to raise your vibration. And of course, please like, share, and subscribe. If you need to find us on the web, check us out at www.thehighvibenation.com. Looking forward to seeing you on the next episode, and keep high vibing.